There's something rather magical about radio waves. They're actually a sort of invisible energy. This aerial can actually pick up enough of this energy to power this primitive receiver I made. It has no battery. It relies entirely on harnessing the energy of the radio waves in the air. It's not very loud, so I'll have to put it straight on the microphone so you can hear it. I managed to pick up Radio Israel broadcasting from Jerusalem on it one night. Although there's something quite wonderful about this little thing, radio sets have been around for so long now that they've become rather ordinary, unglamorous contraptions. And even the electronics inside now look rather familiar. In this programme, I'm going to look at how these mysterious radio waves were discovered and how radio receivers managed to pick them up. Creating radio waves is actually very simple. Any electric spark emits them. Each of these sparks is sending out radio waves. You hear them on the radio as interference. That's why lightning makes radios crackle, and even the tiny spark inside a light switch is enough to produce a little pop. But without a radio set, though, it's not easy to detect these waves, and most scientists didn't believe they existed till just over 100 years ago. What finally convinced them was an experiment performed by the physicist Heinrich Hertz in 1887. It was first demonstrated in Britain by a scientist called Oliver Lodge, here in the Royal Institution. Hertz used very big sparks created by a machine like this called an induction coil. Could you turn it on, Bill? This was connected to these metal plates with another spark gap in the middle, and this acted as a sort of aerial. This was Hertz's receiver. It's simply a loop of copper wire. Well, the big spark creates radio waves with enough energy to make a tiny spark jump across the gap between these balls in the receiver when they're held very close together. So, I hold these in position. OK, Bill. If you look carefully, you can just see the spark jumping across the gap. These sparks are so tiny that Hertz had to let his eyes get accustomed to the dark for 15 minutes and then watch the sparks through a magnifying glass. His apparatus only had a range of a few meters, and he had no interest in finding any practical uses for it. The first person to use radio waves for signalling was Guglielmo Marconi. Marconi had been a difficult child. His mother was a Jameson from the Irish whiskey distillers who'd run away to Italy to be an opera singer and married an Italian landowner. She quickly got bored on his estate.
There's not much going on here. I think we'll go for a little jaunt.
The infant Marconi spent much of his childhood being dragged round Europe by his mother.
Where are we going, Mama?
Barcelona, or perhaps Boulogne.
Gatti colorati, la 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 la, eccolo, eccolo lì, la 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 la.
He showed little interest at school and constantly irritated his father with ridiculous scientific experiments.
What sei? Eccoci. Eccola. E vamos!
You break my plate. I smash your face.
Shortly after failing to get into university, he happened to read an article about Hertz's work.
Oh! Hey.
He immediately started obsessively experimenting and had soon managed to transmit the signals over a mile. Still aged only 20, he arrived in England to try and sell his ideas. Marconi had found that fixing one side of the spark gap to a long vertical wire made a much better aerial than Hertz's. This was further improved by connecting the other side of the spark gap to Earth. Apart from that, the transmitter was basically the same as Hertz's. Any electrical spark will do. Here it's being provided by the ignition circuit of Rex's pickup truck. This primitive transmitter has a surprisingly long range. Marconi also used a much more sensitive receiver called a coherer. This was based on a design by Oliver Lodge. This is my homemade version. It's just a tube of nickel filings. I made it by filing down a coin. You fix one end to the aerial, another kite, and the other end to the earth. And what happens is that when it detects the radio waves, its electrical resistance falls dramatically, so it acts as a sort of switch and turns on a circuit. The theory behind it's very complicated and wasn't worked out till many years later, but it's quite simple to make it work. The only slightly complicated thing is that you have to have something to shake it to restore its high resistance at the end of each signal. So now if I signal to Rex,